Here's the
I'm looking at you.
situation. Let me write it on a chalkboard so everybody can be like, "Ooh, episode 5 shows Constellation." I'm a pro. Hello and welcome to Road Goes Ever On and On. Today, Mark and I are discussing the 5th episode of the thrilling science fiction series Constellation, so spoilers ahead. And if you're enjoying the video, a like would be appreciated. If you don't want to miss any of our content, please be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon for notifications. And with that, let's jump in with we finally got some answers.
We know that Bud and Henry are in different realities for sure. Not brothers.
Yes. I think Alice was like the most spelled out. Things that we've been saying for a hot second. She doesn't speak Swedish. She doesn't say mama. And she explicitly said it in this one. So it's like,
Yep.
in case you were sleeping,
Yep. Let me spell this out for you.
let me let me write it on a chalkboard. Make sure, like give a beat so everybody can be like, "Ooh, I wasn't paying attention. I didn't." That to me felt a little bit like hand holding.
I thought so too a little bit. And the other one I thought was hand holding was when Irina was talking to Henry. She's like, "Oh, are you all right?" And then she's like, "Oh, we're winning the Nobel Prize," and she's like, starts reading it out like, or a particle that is in a state is can affect the other particle in a different state, even if they're very far away. I thought that this episode had a little bit of handhold moments for sure.
Yes. Yeah, so it definitely felt like a little bit of hand holding, a good amount of like revealing, of finally kind of knowing that some of the things we were thinking are definitely the case. But to a certain extent, that also lets us know that there's still 3 episodes left. So there definitely will be more secrets coming up.
I do think like the big secret of like who's controlling this, and one of the questions that a lot of people kept asking in this episode was, are you taking your pills? And like Henry specifically asked Bud if he was taking his meds.
Yeah.
And like, is this lithium keeping these worlds separate, like these parallel universe, like cutting that divide? I think we're gonna get more shocking reveals, hopefully.
I de- I definitely think so. You did kind of touch on this, and this is one of the things that I wanted to briefly talk about, was like quantum entanglement and how I think that's being used to explain some of what's going on. Like it seems to me like people can jump realities or control somebody in the other reality, or it's like some people can have an effect
Right.
on their other one. So here are a few of the things that I think is kind of interesting with this. So it seems like I don't know exactly how this works. I don't know if it's like they're jumping into each other's realities, or what I think is potentially more likely based off the idea of quantum entanglement is that like when the state of one changes, the state of the other automatically changes. So it's like you could actually do something to force one of those particles to change states, and the other one would then mirror that, regardless of the distance. So that's kind of where my head is like, although it did definitely seem when Bud made Henry pee, that did definitely seem like he was in the body for a moment, because there was also like that like laugh, that maniacal
Yeah.
laugh,
Yeah.
you know? But my initial thought is kind of like they can do something in their world that changes their state, which would then like mirror that state with the other one. Something along those lines. That's a
I
thought.
Well, I am curious. So it does. Okay, so it looks like, yeah, we can maybe have them go into each other, because also when he wakes up that one time in the bed, he was talking as Bud to Henry,
Right? He
and he was like, "Go away, go away." But then we also see that he has talked to him through the mirror, so he can
right?
like see a reflection.
Yes.
But what I don't understand is like how he could write on the mirror. Like it seems like they're different mirrors, right?
Right.
So like Bud was at his like apartment that he saw he was writing on the mirror, and he was in some hotel in Germany writing on that mirror. So unless Henry took over Bud's body and wrote it backwards in his mirror, that's like the one part I don't understand is like how the mirror is quantum entangled, or maybe that's the mirror's
Maybe.
counterpart.
Okay, so to borrow a very scientific term from another TV show, I do think that this show is a little wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
I could agree. I could agree. I think the paintings say that a lot.
You know, so it's like it. I think that that's like a good description to tell people to like, okay, get off my back. Like this is just it's very complex and twisted, and you just can't understand it. You know, versus like, does it make sense? But the here's like we're talking about Henry and Bud because that's the obvious one.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the interesting one.
Is yours Alice and Irina?
No.
Oh.
Here's where I am. If if the one can affect the other, possibly swap bodies, I don't know exactly how this works. Then can Irina interact with her corpse? Is she potentially controlling it?
And did she put it into the space
Did she
station?
crash it into the ISS? Like, is Henry getting too close to the sun? You know, and she has to like that experiment might do something or help him learn something or like I don't know. The Valia seems to have some level of like sentience.
Yeah. And well, it's interesting that because she calls it the Valia and not like a person's name. And this also kind of reminds me of like that changerling that they were talking about that
But,
Alice was taking about before.
but we did also learn that her name was Valia in that other world.
Hmm.
I don't know if you remember that. And if you don't remember that, one of our somebody commented on the video, and I had noticed that she's a Russian speaker, and she said one of the things that she noticed is that in the other world, Irina's name is Valia.
Oh,
So
okay.
one
Yes.
100% the corpse, the corpse's name is Valia. I don't know why it's being referred to as like the Valia,
Right.
but
Well, I think maybe Alice doesn't know Russian, especially this Alice. It doesn't seem
right.
like she understands the tapes. So she just maybe got the name Valia and she doesn't know what it is. She doesn't know if it's a person or an entity, so she just calls it the
Yeah,
Valia.
yes. So I'm kind of wondering like what can other people do because it also seems like Joe is still entangled with her corpse. You know, she gets these pains from where her got an injury that was lethal,
Yeah.
and she sees views of it. I even wonder, was it Paul that let her out, or was it like her entangled corpse? Or like I don't know.
Of the capsule when the capsule wasn't working, I
When it had to be unlocked from the other, like it had to be undocked from the other side, and so similar to that, if and we can I guess we can delve into this a little bit more when we kind of talk about conspiracy. If Irena is somehow manipulating her corpse, does she have a bigger part in this? And is she trying to stop Henry? Like, she did ask Henry the question of, did you take your pills? And it seems like everybody that asked that question, it seems like they know
Right. Well,
that you
I
should
mean,
be that they're not just vitamins that you should be taking.
Henry did ask Bud that,
Yes.
and what's his name? Frederick asked Joe that.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I do think Frederick is in on it. I think he's deep
I'll
state.
I'll save myself until the conspiracy thing. I could go either way. Who knows which way I go? I think
Ooh,
it's pretty clear,
ooh.
but you can guess.
I can't guess. I don't know.
A topic that was brought up earlier in the show that I
Mm-hmm.
think definitely came up hard in this liminal space. This
Yes.
idea of like in between, and we saw it a lot with like the siblings
Mm-hmm.
in Denmark.
Right.
This, by the way, is not a Game of Thrones show that like takes a lot of time with like the travel. She's like, I'm in Denmark. I'm in Sweden.
I'm
I'm
in
here. I'm
Germany. I'm here. I'm there.
there.
Yeah. That's okay. That I don't expect that
that,
from this show.
that that's okay. That's okay. So yeah. Anyways, and the siblings were kind of interesting to me.
I liked them too. I wonder if they will come back because, in a way, we have Bud and Henry who are like twins in a way, but
Right?
separated out by parallel universe.
Yeah.
But the twins are actually twins, and they're very obsessed with these radio signals and these ghost tapes that they're getting. That reoccurring theme of ghosts. They have
Oh
these
yeah.
special tapes that are ghost
Literally called
tapes.
ghost tapes. Yes. 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 Here's a line that hit me hard when you think about it. He called Lawrence called her a crisis actor.
He did.
Think about this. In the tape, they would have heard her die.
Yeah.
I think he literally thought she was a crisis. Like, she's dead. He heard it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So it's like this person can't be up to any good, you know? Because
Yes.
if it's taking her name, she's dead. That's wild. The life that they have lived, listening to these like record or like listening to the like these transmissions,
Mm-hmm.
and then everybody around them telling them that it's like, no, you're wrong, and like courts,
Getting
getting
lawsuits on
them
them.
lawsuits, right?
That these people are not just cranks; they're criminals.
Right. Which
Yeah.
then I'll stay a little bit away from it, but it bleeds into like the next parts of like conspiracy of it definitely seems like it's not just people, some people saying like, hey, they're kooky. It does seem like they're potentially being shut up.
Right. Because it does seem like in one of the first two episodes, when the recap, they're talking about where they're from. They were like saying like, oh, we can hear them, and then like Irina ignoring it. She was just like, no. And so
Right.
that's another part of that conspiracy of like covering up like these people are like some of the few people that are able to hear these ghost messages that NASA and the Cosmos can't
Right.
identify, can't decipher.
So it was interesting, like, finally hearing these tapes gave a lot of information, and it was interesting that it has to do with liminal spaces. But it does lead me to question an idea that we had. So
Okay.
one of the people that watches us brought up a brilliant theory, which I have subscribed to for some time, saying that the reason that Alice is part of this is because she was an observer.
Mm-hmm.
I do like that idea. I do still think that is a possibility.
I think so too.
But unlike so many of the others, where it's like when you're part of it, you switch places with your other person, this Alice is in her world. She is with her dad. She is in her school with her friends. She can see the other world sometimes,
Yeah.
but she didn't switch. And so I wonder if this literally comes back to like we were actually given the answer. The the teacher that Magnus was cheating with might have literally given us the answer when she said that Alice is at a liminal age.
Hmm.
And so maybe that's why she didn't swap, but she is able to kind of see between these worlds, which might also explain why Wendy had the nightmare. Because she might also be seeing glimpses of this other world.
Well, what I'm curious about though is it does seem Alice started going into this closet thing, going into the cupboards because she's hearing the Valia, right?
Yes, yes.
But it doesn't seem like she's been doing this cupboard thing within like the 2 days of when the Cal went off, right? Like it seemed like it had been a recurring thing, like almost like she's heard about the Valia for longer than the Cal episode.
Which may point to the fact that it's not the observer being the origin, but rather that she's that liminal age that allows her to see between worlds and like see the Valia and you know? Because that's a good point. It did happen she has been hiding in the cupboard since before the accident happened.
Right. But and it seems like she was hiding in the cupboard to stay away from the Valia, like it's playing a game with her. I do like the idea that she was the observer, and that was
I
what
really
made
like
her.
that idea. I just don't know if there's like enough evidence for it. I love the idea. Just don't know
And,
if there's enough evidence for it now.
and why would Irina's, double, her other person, be contacting Alice? Like, it seems like everybody is kind of separated to their own. Besides, like, Paul and Joe, which, because maybe they were on the same ship, one died, one didn't die, and both the realities,
Yeah.
they are a little connected. But Bud seems connected to Henry.
Yeah.
Irina seems connected to Valia. Alice seems connected to Alice, except with Valia. Or, yeah, the Valia.
I mean, Joe can see the other Alice,
Yep.
and so I think that at a kind of like the sibling set of like you have to want to hear it. You have to like train your ear of like they are open to this situation and they're receptive to it and that allows them to potentially that's kind of my thought.
Okay. Well,
So if we're
speaking.
talking about
Oh, wait. Go
what?
ahead. No, you go ahead.
If we're talking about the Valia,
Mm-hmm.
like talking to Alice, I think that potentially segues us into like the conspiracy kind of end and like the Big Brother end. That it definitely seems like there is a group, an organization, a something that is trying to do something or prevent people from knowing or doing things. Like they have an agenda. I think the pills are related to it.
Yep.
I don't know what the purpose of it is. Like, are they trying to get or keep this power? Are they trying to prevent people from like getting this power or knowledge? Or I don't know.
I think it is something that they can't really explain, and so they're trying to cover it up. Just like when Frederick was talking about the eyesight that comes back bad, or the astronauts that have burnout. It's just like things they don't talk about. So I think that like
Okay.
there might be an understanding to people that have like a high enough clearance about this phenomenon that's happening when astronauts go into space and like these people switching, and instead of being like because they don't have an answer for it, instead of being like this is what we're experiencing, they're just covering it up blatantly and just like, okay, well, we've noticed that lithium has been a good like band-aid to like stop people from crossing over and experiencing those things.
Right. I wonder if it's like, even if they don't necessarily know what to do with this and they haven't like gotten to the very bottom of it, it's one of these things where it's like they know that knowledge is power, so as long as no other people and no other countries know about it, there will not be additional science on it, and they can be the only people trying to use it, even if they don't know what they can do with it.
Well, but the interesting thing, it doesn't seem like Irina and like Frederick are like actively trying to do things with that like information. It does seem like Henry is the big pusher of the Cal, who's like trying to, you know, dive deep into this science of like,
Doing it publicly, like he versus I think that any experimentation they're doing is private to keep it off the grid.
okay, I can see
Because
that.
once again, I do think that Irena potentially used her own dead body to like crash into the ISS in order to maybe stop him from being able to do more experimentation.
That could work. And you
I like
think,
the timing pretty much lines up with like when the experiment was supposed to happen.
okay. I mean, you're right. It was right when they activated the experiment, the body crashed into it. And so, you think Irina did it herself intentionally?
But potentially, I do think that she is using her own corpse. I think that she asked Henry if he's taking his meds because she knows that if he doesn't, that he might be able to like access the other. And then I don't know, like I don't know exactly what he can do with it. She tried to stop Ilya's investigation on his pills and what
Right.
everybody's taking.
As soon as he looked at the records, he was trying to get the classified medical records, and she showed up like right away and was just like, "What are you looking at these medical records for?" He's just like,
Yep.
"Oh, why do you ask?" And
I think
conveniently,
Frederick.
they were deleted.
Yes.
That leads to
I think
conspiracy.
I think Frederick may be part of it, but I think he may be like a pawn that's like used to do what he's told. So it's like he's told, "Hey, Joe's important. Keep her on her pills." You know,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if he's like super in on it.
Yeah.
Just some thoughts.
Well, I do I do think he is in more on it because like he wanted to take Joe and leave. They originally had a plan to leave,
Yeah.
and he's really trying to keep Joe's episode, her psychotic episode, under wraps. Doesn't want it to go public, and I wonder if that's part of the cover up as well. Like he's not worried about Joe's
Right.
career. He's more worried about this bigger secret getting out.
Like who cares? That like Joe suddenly comes back and doesn't want to have anything to do with him anymore. And like what they were doing before has come out. Why does Frederick still have any skin in the game and not be like, you know what? She's being fucking weird. She's like
Cuckoo
throwing me
bananas.
to the curb. She's cuckoo bananas. If she does this, it's gonna ruin her career, but that's on her.
Yeah.
Versus being like, we gotta keep this quiet.
Because I do think his career is on the line.
And then he threatened her job. Like, put her on the phone or I will fire her.
Yeah.
She's not on the clock.
Right.
That's like abusive.
I mean, yeah,
Put her on the
that's.
phone, or I will, or give me the phone. That's what it is.
Oh,
Give me
yeah.
the phone, or I'll fire her. You're telling
That's.
that to her husband? Like, what choice does he have?
Yeah. I do feel bad for poor Magnus. Like, he's been kind of put through the ringer on this one.
I know.
Bashed his
Like,
head.
and like he was in an unhappy relationship where his wife was cheating on him, and a bunch of people knew about it. There was talk of it.
Yeah.
And so he finally starts like engaging with somebody. He doesn't go all the way. He gets to a kiss. At least that's what he said. Who like
Right.
who knows whether or not he told, but like got to a kiss, you know? And then his wife comes back and all of a sudden she's like, I love you, and like, like,
You're
I
the
don't
most
know.
important thing.
Yes, like,
And apparently, this Magnus, he didn't, when Joe left, she didn't even say goodbye, like, didn't even look at him to say goodbye, Like, he
right.
thought he was on the outs there. And now he comes back, or his wife comes back, and she's having this, what he perceives as a crazy episode, and, he gets his fears confirmed, gets his head bashed in, his daughter's now kidnapped.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's frightening.
Let's chat a little bit about the science of this. Okay, so here are here's some like nerd dump that can potentially help if they are actually trying to use these concepts to explain what's going on. So, let's start off with Schrodinger's cat.
Mm.
And it's important to know that, and I didn't know that people didn't understand this. Like this experiment is ubiquitous. Even if people don't even if they don't really understand the experiment, I think everybody's pretty much heard of it.
It is probably a very classic experiment.
I was talking with my wife about this, and as I was trying to explain some of the intricacies, she had this just like life-changing moment. This is a thought experiment. It's not. No animals have ever been harmed. There is not actually a Schrodinger's cat that was, and it's actually not even physically possible. No cats have ever been harmed. It's not physically possible to do this. It's still an interesting idea. And I think it's basically more of like an analogy than it is like a true, because once again, you really could not do this experiment because the cat would be the observer, and so the cat would never be in two states because it's not a quantum thing. But it's an interesting idea of like the basic idea, without like getting into the weeds of Schrodinger's cat, is that while the cat is in the box and not being observed, the cat has one of two states, because there is a poison that can be released that has like a 50-50 chance based off like the decay of a radioactive thing. So the cat is both alive and dead. It lives in both states until you observe it. It is when you open the box and observe it that the waveform collapses from all of the possibilities, which in this case is just like two possibilities and it's 50-50. When it collapses from this like waveform of both of these are existent to it is either dead or alive, and it is the act of you observing it that causes that to happen. That's the basic idea of Schrodinger's cat, and it kind of gets into the like the observer effect. That observing something affects it. And we're gonna dig a little bit further into it with the next experiment, which has a very important visual that I think has been referenced in the show, and I think could explain some of the weirdness of this show. Double slit experiment. Have you heard of this one?
Yes.
Okay, so for anybody that hasn't, I'll do my best to explain it. A visual that will help kind of explain some of the things that are going on. If I have two stones in my hand, my hands are separated by at least a foot or so, and I release the stones at the same time into a body of water. Each of them will have like circular ripples, and because they're close enough to each other, the ripples will interact with each other. And the important thing to know is that two peaks result in a higher peak, and two troughs, like dips in the waves, will result in a lower trough or dip. And if we have an equal peak and trough, they will actually negate each other. And this is important to understand because this is how waves interact with each other. And our current understanding of quantum mechanics is that things like photons act as both waves and particles. So the double slit experiment. We have something that can release photons. We have a sheet of metal in front of it with two slits. There's a little bit of space in between them. I don't know exactly how much. And then there is something on the other end that can detect, after a little bit of space, that can detect where the photons go. So as we release this stream of photons, they're a wave. They go out. Some of them get to the two slits. Those ones go through the two slits, spread out from the two slits, and kind of like those like two rocks that were dropped in the water, those waves are rippling out and interacting with each other. And so where we have like a peak, you are more likely to have you're going to have like a higher, like two peaks are going to cause a higher peak. Two troughs are going to cause a deeper trough. And so we see, and this is where we get into something that was talked about in the show, which is like an interference event or an interference pattern. You'll see this on that thing that was like seeing where the particles hit. You'll see an interference pattern. So it's like where the peaks are, there's a stripe showing that there is like a good amount of particles hitting that. And then where you have like two troughs, you'll have stripes that really weren't interacted with because there were few to no photons that actually went there. So we see this interference pattern. Okay, so all of this we're cool with this. This makes sense, hopefully. I know we're getting into like really geeky stuff. Hopefully this makes sense. This is where the quantum world gets fucking crazy. And this is where we kind of bring it back to the show a little bit. The same thing happens if we release photons one at a time. So it's not a bunch of photons all coming out at the same time and all in these waves and interacting with each other. We get the exact same interference pattern if we release one photon at a time. It's as if, because we don't observe the photon until it gets to the end, where it actually hits, and we're recording its position, it's as if the photon travels every path simultaneously and is therefore interacting with all of its versions. And so where there are more of its potential paths causing those peaks, from the two slits, we have higher peaks. From the two slits, as we have like troughs of possibilities, we have deeper troughs, and we have the same interference aspect. And it gets slightly wilder, coming back to kind of like the observer effect. If we add a check at the slits to see, and this is where we observe, to see which slit it goes through, we no longer see an interference pattern. Because now it's as if, because it was observed going through one of those two slits, it is not now going through both at the same time and interfering with itself and then collapsing to one situation. I don't know how clear this is. I know, like, quantum mechanics is crazy stuff, and even if you study it, it will never make intuitive sense. Even if you can, like, use the information.
Yeah, I definitely have heard of this experiment and the observer effect through these particles, these photon particles, and how they were observed, and how observing them one way and observing them or not observing them created two different patterns, which made literally no sense unless you account for the observer effect.
And that one particle is doing all of the options and therefore interacting with itself before it collapses into that observed state. You know, so it's like the when we're releasing them one at a time, all the potential realities are interacting with each other and creating that pattern. So if you look at the kind of the visual I sent you, it looks like what we saw on the Cal.
Right. I did notice
of that. And I kind of think that is the idea of, like, rather than it being like something else is messing with your experiment and causing bad data, it's more of like this new form of matter, whatever it is, you know, that you supposedly can only find in space, is interacting with itself. Like, it is disturbing itself. It is interfering with itself. And I think that potentially explains some of the weirdness of this show, of, like, why the Joe that has never played piano suddenly can play the piano. Because, like, this kind of like one particle taking all of the paths and potentially having an impact on what happens, even if it doesn't actually take that path. Like, in the end, it goes through one of those slits and it goes like one direction. Like, when it collapses, you know, potentially, like, Joe, the fact that Joe could have learned piano, or did learn piano in this one world, is somehow affecting her in this world, and she's able to play the piano. So does that make any sense? Does, you know, like,
Yeah. No, I do think that the show has talked about, like, the observer effect, the, you know, state of particles being in different states at different times.
Yeah.
So I do think it does.
We've seen the interference pattern.
Yep.
On the Cal.
Mm-hmm. So I do think that it's a great connection of, like, what this show is kind of going for, you know, with quantum mechanics and whatnot.
So now let me crap on it.
Okay, take a big old dump on it. I'm ready.
Quantum mechanics is and maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe this has nothing to do with quantum mechanics, but although they do keep referencing these ideas, but quantum mechanics is extremely complicated if you know what the hell is going on, and it's wild. It's like you've never experienced anything like it in your life. Like, what happens on the quantum level just is so different from what happens on the macro level that you've never seen it. It just doesn't make any sense. Even if you understand, it doesn't make sense. So I kind of feel like some of the best sci-fi that has some like weird rules about like what the science is. I think it's best when the rules are simple, but that allows for very complex things to emerge from those simple rules. I don't want to spoil the show for anybody, so I won't get too into it. But Dark. Basically, it turns out that that show has like two rules. I won't kind of get into them, and they're pretty simple. Like you could explain. I wouldn't want to because I wouldn't want to like ruin it for anybody. But you can explain the two science rules that are happening. You can say like, "Hey, this is a thing that's affecting things, and this is a thing that's affecting things. Everything comes from these two things." And anybody can hear that and be like, "Okay, yeah, I get that. That makes sense." And then you're like, but you know what comes out of this? Like this tangled mess.
Yeah.
It's like the story that unfolds that is complex from those like very simple rules. That's awesome because anybody can like throw that tangled map on the wall of like who everybody is and what they're doing and how they're connecting and how these rules are like affecting them. Like that's the complicated part is like how are people interacting with these actually relatively simple rules.
Yeah. I do think that
First,
this show is a lot more complicated rules. Like,
it is. At
I
least it feels like it. Who knows? Maybe it turns out it's super simple, but it feels like it's like the rules are complex. So it's like then what comes out of that is like I don't understand how this stuff is happening. And it's not even like they're playing fast and loose with the rule, like with the science concepts. So it's
yeah.
not even like if you're like an uber nerd and you're like, oh, I understand these, then I'll understand. It's like, no, they're just taking the idea and then like,
Yeah. I do think
um,
that it has been more complex, and so the relationships with the characters have been a little bit, we're 5 episodes deep, and I do feel like the relationships like between the characters are very shallow. Not like they're not deep, but like, Joe.
but they are shallow, and that's like and it's part of it is because of they wrote themselves into this box.
Mhm.
Joe literally can't connect with anybody because this isn't her world.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's hard for her to connect with people, it's hard for other people to connect with her, and that makes it hard as an audience to connect when everybody feels like,
Right. And well, yeah, and even like if you think of like Henry's been really focused on the work. He had a couple relationship moments with Irina, but like none of that's been, touched upon ever since. Irina wasn't even in the
right.
last episode, so like all these characters do feel like very shallow and very hollow. And
We
it is.
we finally saw like Ilya's relationship with her, and it's like it just took her one moment to convince him of, he said the thing of like, "Are you sure you didn't mix the pills up?" And she's like, "Do you think I would have mixed the pills up?" And instantly he's like, "Yeah, she's a details person. Like, no, she didn't." And so it's like we finally started to see that relationship, and that was
Yeah.
nice, but we barely got that. It's like we're not the relationships we are delving into are broken relationships because they're relationships of people that aren't the people they know.
Yeah.
And
And
then the relationships that potentially could work, we're not really delving it like uh Henry and Irina, like those two have both gone through the same thing. Like that's a very interesting relationship. And we've like barely touched on it.
they've had like a romantic thing, but like
Yeah.
also barely touched on it. I do
Right.
think that when you have such a complex set of rules and like really try to like go into these super sciencey concepts, it does. I think it's gonna make the landing hard to like stick the landing and be like, this was satisfying because all my questions were answered and everything was, tied up with a neat little bow. Like, and I don't know how they even like what like a second season even looks like from this point.
I think it's a limited series.
Oh, it's a one and done?
I think so.
Okay. Okay.
Which is interesting because that means like 3 episodes to get out the well, and I might be wrong about that.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that, but I potentially think so. But it like I am not even completely sure exactly who this show is for because it is using some very complex science jargon
Mm-hmm.
that's really tough to understand. But um it's like super simplifying it and not really like not really dealing with it with reverence. So I feel like if you really know these things, you won't be like, "Oh, that's really cool," because it's like, yeah, they're just like oversimplifying it. So to me, it doesn't feel like it's for the super geek, but because it's using these like super weird, hard to understand concepts, it also doesn't feel like it's for, you know,
The
the like
everyman.
the everyman.
Yeah.
It's like I
Well, maybe that's why we get the
it,
hand holding, where they're like,
yeah,
all right, every
but
man, we're going to tell you exactly what's happening. The particles are affecting each other, even in different states from far away.
but if it waits until episode 5 to do that, like how many everymans will stay all the way through where it's like I don't know what's going on, but I like me some space people, so
I mean, I
you
did,
know,
I
like,
did feel like it was a little handholdy with when Henry was talking to Alice, like in episode 3, and he was
yeah,
talking about the states of two
yes,
particles, and so like, I
yes.
think they have done a little bit more of the handholding before, but
Mm-hmm.
I do think the first 3 episodes they had like a lot of mystery to what was happening and what was going on, that you weren't so like questioning the science behind it.
Which that might as well have been like directly to the audience, that scene between like Henry and Alice, because uh at her age, a stranger comes up to you at at that age and tries to explain what they're doing in quantum mechanics, and it's like I don't know you and I want to play. You
Yeah,
know,
like
like that this weird stuff that makes no sense to me.
it's
Stop
over my
talking to me.
head.
You're stranger danger. You know?
Yeah.
Like that scene doesn't make sense other than I'm talking to you guys. Here's a
I'm looking at you.
situation. I'm gonna like very simply explain what's happening in this show so a kid could understand it. Okay, anyways, Alice, here's the situation.
Alice, yeah, who I'm really talking to.
Alice,
And Alice is just like, I want to hear about this. Tell me.
tell me, yeah. Oh, this is cool.
Tell me, creepy bald man, please.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So I am still enjoying the show. Um it's definitely not like the top of my list. Where and this is an interesting show in the meantime, of just
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
once a week. It's interesting to think about these things. But it definitely has flaws, for me at least.
No, I have kind of been feeling that with the last couple episodes. It's a good show, but I might even agree with Dawn. I know Dawn had said that they kind of spoiled that Bud and Henry were two different people too early on, and I am kind of Like that could have been a really cool, like if they kept playing up the brother
Bigger tease out.
conversation. Yeah, like just like, oh, I've been talking to my brother and, he's having a hard time, or, just like
Yeah,
really like build that up and then like drop it, you know. I mean maybe there is the little bit of tease when Bud's talking to Henry and Bud's like, I'm gonna fuck things up. Like I'm gonna get over there
right,
and I'm gonna just destroy your life. And like maybe the show pivots and Bud becomes Henry again and he just
right.
starts wreaking havoc in World B. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Speaking of the siblings, I did a little
Oh,
bit of
yeah.
research and there's some
Okay.
really cool information about the siblings. So at one point they were talking about like amateur, building these radios and just listening out there, and it was just like not sanctioned by anything, just amateur people doing it. So they mention that there were the Italian brothers, and these were real people that actually made and listened to these radios. And the Giudica Cordiglia brothers are two Italian former amateur radio operators who made audio recordings which allegedly supported the conspiracy theory that the Soviet space program covered up cosmonaut deaths in the 1960s. The pair claimed to have recorded several failed secret Soviet space missions, which then had me dig
That's
more. I dug more into all these things. In 1967, there was a cosmonaut that's capsule came back and burned up in the atmosphere.
silly.
And there were recordings of this astronaut that people had heard throughout the world of this guy that knew he was gonna die. It was
Yeah,
a male cosmonaut, but he put on these recordings that he knew he was gonna die. He was mad that the Soviet Union sent him up in this shitty space rocket that was gonna fail, like doomed to fail, and he was like cursing them
yeah.
out, and he like came back and like the capsule like burned up on impact, and that was the one that lines up with the Urania capsule.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Okay, I do like the world building of this world. I just wish it was a little bit clearer because I didn't. We watched Utopia together,
Yeah.
and the second season had that really interesting part where the past had to do with very real world events,
Yeah.
and I loved that like injection of feeling very grounded in the real world. And I feel like this show has a lot of that real world stuff, but it's not super obvious. Like if I wasn't an internet sleuth digging stuff up, I would have never known that painting.
Yeah.
That was in there that was a real world painting, and that the other one was a real world painting by that same artist. I wouldn't have known about the poem that the thing was based off of. I didn't know that like there were two Italians that like actually were amateur radio people that were doing this, and that like there are conspiracies of this. I don't know how you make an audience aware that there is like obscure but real information in your show. I wish that was somehow a little bit more obvious so that
Agreed.
like your average viewer could, because the show is not very grounded. It's so like the concepts are so like weird and abstract. What's going on is done in such a like choppy and confusing way that this could be one of the few ways to like really ground the show. I think that and some real relationships.
Yes. Yep.
And I'm bummed that that wasn't like obvious because that's cool.
It's so cool. And even so, I dug a little bit deeper.
Oh,
I know, I know. So the story that the one of the siblings, the girl sibling, that she explains about the astronauts and the angels, that's a real event that happened in 1984. Like, this is a real thing that the astronauts saw, where 3 cosmonauts were in space. They were like, we see an angel. And it, like, the way that they described the angel, it was this big, like, tower of light that was just gorgeous, and it had a human face. And they all saw it unanimously. And then 3, like, or I think it's like maybe like 100 days later, they sent 3 other astronauts up there. And I might be wrong on the 100 days, but it was shortly after they send 3 other astronauts up there. And then all 6 of the astronauts saw the same thing again. So these are real events that they are picking from. And that's kind of like where I think this show initially came from, right? Like, I think that all these weird, events that happen with people that have gone to space, they wanted to really, like, make an explanation for it.
How could we explain it? Yes.
Yeah. So I do believe that's where this show is coming from.
And then that explains, like, the conspiracy theory tour, where it's like you have these people that are like, that's so much more interesting.
I know.
It's like the real world to me is more interesting than what they've crafted. And I don't know, maybe somehow, like, starting at some point early on in the first episode, having a disclaimer, like, this is not depicting real events, but it is very loosely based off of these things. Here's a wild way of how it could have happened. Like, obviously not real, but, like,
yeah,
that goes back to, like, you saying the video of, like, Bud decking the guy.
Yeah.
Like, you think that is, like, inspired off of, like, that real video.
Right.
That makes it so much more interesting. It still doesn't... They didn't nail it enough to, like, really land that.
Right. And I wouldn't have even known, except the only thing that made me look these up, because, like, we've heard about the the astronauts seeing angels in space, and I never thought to be like, oh, I want to see if this is real. But there was when they mentioned the 2 Italian brothers, they show a picture of them.
Yeah.
Like, briefly, and I was like, those look like real people. I'm going to look them up. I'm going to see if they were real guys, and they were the ones, proving that the Soviets were covering up astronaut deaths early in the 60s.
Damn.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? And now we are, like, crapping a little bit more on the show. Braun texted me, and she said, really not feeling Constellation, or more so not understanding it. Not sure if I'll be continuing to watch it. We'll see. Some sci-fi shows are better than others for me, apparently. And she's not a big sci-fi person, so...
Right. Like, I could imagine it being very complicated for her. Like, it's not easy to understand.
I am more likely to watch a show like this, even if it's not, like... Because it is filmed well, it is acted well, like, it does have a lot of good things going for it.
Yeah.
And it's in a genre that I do enjoy. So I can, like...
The performances are great.
Give it... Yeah. I can definitely get through it. But I can understand somebody where this is not their forte.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely feels like homework, trying to keep up. I'm still not completely certain of what's going on. The ending of this episode, when we finally catch up to Joe and Alice getting to the cabin, I don't understand how the events we saw, where Joe tells Alice, that's not me on the record, or Alice tells Joe, that's not me on the recording. I don't speak Swedish, and I don't call you mama. I don't understand how that fits into the other stuff we saw previously, which maybe that points to like a third reality or like a blending in them or just like I'm still confused of like previously when we saw first episode Alice driving her there or Joe driving her there,
Yeah.
Alice giving her side eye of like, who are you? Joe turning the knob down after her daughter asked, "Oh, that's right, because she's trying to keep the cow cold."
That's how I took that.
But she just lied. But like, I don't know. Why can't you say like, "Hey, I gotta keep this thing cold." Like, why lie to your daughter? I
Yeah.
get that now, but like, I don't know. That was weird. And like, her daughter's just like, literally just watch you turn it down while you're telling me it's broken. Like, why would you just not touch it? And
It
then like, I don't understand where it like fits in that timeline. And then like,
it
Joe
did.
grabs the iPad and like watches the thing, and then like we see the two like I don't know where this happened.
Yeah, because it does seem like when we first meet Joe and Alice, Alice seems very like apprehensive of Joe. Like, I don't know if I can really trust where we're going. But then like we saw that this Alice talked to Magnus and was just like I don't want anything to happen to her. Like, I don't want you to lock her up. Like, I can help her. I can, save her. Just let me figure out, spend a little bit more time with her. And now it seemed like this was the same, that Alice, but not the Alice from when we first saw them.
Right. So I can't understand how somebody that's like sci-fi is not my jam, especially confusing sci-fi. I can totally get like not super into it.
Yeah, I could see that.
Versus like I don't know. I felt like every episode of Dark was just like what was its own little masterpiece that would like things were evenly teased out the entire way. It wasn't like Silo where it held too many answers back and just kept asking more questions. It wasn't like this where it's like dumping answers at various points while doing hand holding. Like it gave very smart ways of giving answers, generally through like really interesting like visual cues where it's like you have to be paying attention, not like blink and you miss it, but like interesting visual cues instead of like verbal dumps of Henry talking to Alice and explaining things. Like it and then like every episode would have like a beautiful like emotional part with like some killer music. This is I'm okay with this, but it's not the best.
Yeah, I could agree. But with that, I think our journey has come to an end. Thank you folks so much for joining us for Constellation Episode 5. Next week, we will be doing Constellation Episode 6. So please come back next Monday, and we'll see you there. I'm Mark. This is Sterling.
Thanks.